That's great. So I would like to talk on the government, local authorities, and civil society and their role in Ukrainian reconstruction and how it changed during past 3 years and what tensions or scope for cooperation and mutual understanding and assistance it creates. Actually, my colleagues during the first panel created very good conceptual framework to approach current developments in Ukraine, but I would also like to remind you that totally we face with the huge losses and destruction. And I would like also to say that infrastructure sector, social sector, and productive sector, namely Ukrainian economy, needs to the huge costs to be restored. And recently, just like a week ago, the latest rapid damage national report was published by the World Bank, and now we are facing with the situation when Ukraine needs 176 billion of United States dollars to address the losses and damages, and the overall reconstruction and recovery due to this estimation will demand more than 500 billion of dollars. Could you see my slide changes, by the way?
Yes.
Great. And what progress, if I may say so, do we have in total damages during the past year? Actually, if the situation with housing, transport stays more or less sad but stable, the energy sector and what is notable here, education and science sectors faces with a massively destruction. And actually, if we are talking about the comprehensive recovery taken together with reconstruction, it should be admitted that social sector, namely not only housing, but health protection, social protection, and livelihoods, and actually education and human capital will demand the most. And after that, productive and infrastructure sector will need the huge inputs from or kind of pushes from the donors, from Ukrainian state, from public investors to be totally recovered. And what do we have in deoccupied and war-affected communities, which are primarily my main kind of focus of research, is that they still, when planning the reconstruction or even implementing the very ambitious projects of the urgent and future reconstruction, they still under the constant shelling. Actually, in my home city, Kharkiv, the last shelling was last night. And they still try to cope with the ongoing destructions of critical infrastructure. But from other point of view, there is a huge staff storage and lack of competences of some deliberated communities. And I hope that we will hear about the occupation and deoccupation of Ukraine during the next panel. Also, they are facing with a shortage of budgeting because state extracted some taxes payment from the local budget during last year. And they also need to cover basic humanitarian needs. They face with the IDP who are coming to these communities from the front line, and also they're very ambitious to compete with the more peaceful areas to get some donors' attention and governmental funds. Actually, there were two basic models of the reconstruction which were and probably still are on the table. Namely, it was one proposed in 2022. I called it governmental centralized model, when they establish kind of model of urgent reconstruction through ministers, and also it was supposed that they will be kind of national strategy for comprehensive recovery. And in 2022, they re-established the Agency for Reconstruction. And now I would say that they are going back to this governmental centralized model. But there is also decentralized model, and I hope that my colleague will make a huge input into decentralization narratives and explanation. Nevertheless, it was also considered as a prominent and promising model to rebuild Ukrainian communities. As far as decentralization reform was recognized one of the most successful ones since the Euromaidan Revolution of Dignity, and the local assessment, the local involvement, the creation of community programs for the comprehensive recovery were in the core of this model. And kind of due to this model, communities should play the main role, and together with government and regional planning, it could be the most promising for them to adjust themselves during the war and to get a push for development after the hot stage of the war. Well, during past 3 years, it was a very rapid evolution of the attempts to implement this model in Ukraine. And in early 2022, I call it this Lugano model because I participated in Lugano conference myself and listened carefully what our government proposed to the allies. So it was about the government playing the main role in let's say, shaping the forms of reconstruction, and also kind of involving allies, even personally as representatives of the state, to be responsible for regional reconstruction. And we can see how the Prime Minister of Ukraine presented this model in Lugano. But during 2023, and I would say during 2024 as well, the model was kind of reshaped and switched, and the communities and regions are supposed to play the main role. So it was the massive development, all the local and regional programs on recovery all over Ukraine. And during this time, the state strategy for regional development or general regulations, how to address all the I would say massive task was kind of lacking. And recently, the government, together with prime donors, decide to prioritize the new model and launch the private investment reform. And there are only 3 ministries now which are responsible for the project selections, and this was the task to create the project's pipeline in Ukraine, the single one, to work closer with donors on the central Kyiv level. Meanwhile, some local project competition is still on the table, and communities are able to compete for smaller grants and to let's say, try to work with donors separately. Well, when we are talking about the trust and civic cohesion, especially in regarding the reconstruction tasks, it's very interesting that Ukrainians mostly consider themselves or communities as the primary agents who should decide on reconstruction priorities. For them, it's not government mostly, but citizens themselves or even locally elected authorities. And we can see here that due to opinion polls, the central government or let's say appointed authorities, namely the military administration, they less trusted that even some international organization or donors representatives. And when we are talking about the frontline authorities, where I conducted face-to-face interviews and focus groups, namely it's Kharkiv, Zaporizhia, and Mykolaiv, we can see that actually the public opinion distributed pretty differently, because in Kharkiv, for example, people more trusted to the local elected authorities and city council and mayor. They enjoy the high level of trust, so people delegate in a way even the possibility or function to let's say select priorities or establish priorities for reconstruction. When we are talking about Mykolaiv, it's very interesting that it's the city with the, I would say, higher trust to central government and one of the highest trust among all Ukrainian cities to the international experts and international organizations. And in Zaporizhia, the situation is a bit different because there is no elected mayor currently, so people mostly rely on themselves and demonstrate the highest share of, let's say, self-confidence in deciding the reconstruction priorities among all Ukrainian cities. And I will try to answer questions why it's so. But when Ukrainians are asking about who should control the use of funds for reconstruction, and it could create a link to the previous presentations on corruption, actually here Ukrainians more rely on international partners and on the citizens of Ukraine and Ukrainian, I would say, NGOs here. So civil society and foreign donors and partners should play the main role in monitoring and control misusing or proper spending of the funds for reconstruction. Interesting to note that when Ukrainians were asked who should primarily finance the restoration of Ukrainian cities and damaged infrastructure, there will total consensus that there should be Russian assets or Russia, let's say, a society and government who should pay for damages. So it's still shows us that Ukrainians demand the just peace, not only the ceasefire, and also the great hope is aligned to international organizations, central government, and what is interesting here, the Ukrainian business and let's say business in general supposed not to be the key player in Ukrainian reconstruction. Meanwhile, the European Union and foreign donors, they see private investments one of the, I would say, major key to rebuild Ukraine. And when analyzing the models or let's say patterns how different communities and regions involved people, civil society, professional group to the development of these strategies during past 2 years, it is interesting finding that having the legal framework which is kind of equal for any Ukrainian community, the informal institutions and connections kind of implemented in very different way. But there are some patterns among the Ukrainian cities and regions, and Kharkiv, Kyiv, Mykolaiv, and Zaporizhia could be displayed or presented as a different patterns. What does it mean? In Kharkiv city, similarly to Kyiv region, they try to involve political parties representatives to the development of the projects, and they try to interact with a limited set of donors which were trusted enough or which were operating in the region or in the city before the full-scale invasion, but they decided not to involve citizen or even NGO representatives at all. So they demanded to do this, but the authorities tried not to communicate that they are collecting proposals. They tried not to approach NGOs or civil society or professional groups themselves. So there was very limited or zero civic participation in the process of development the program. In Mykolaiv, I would say they demonstrated the most kind of inclusive process of creating this program, because there was a pre-established, before the full-scale invasion, civic expert board which co-worked with the mayor and city council pretty efficiently since the 2020, since the local elections. They tried to approach and be kind of hospital to any foreign partner, and also they try to use local media and approach NGOs to provide the broad citizens involvement. And in Zaporizhia, where the political will is really weak now because the mayor is kind of absent and the acting person haven't been elected, the civil society decided to play a proactive role, and they created coalitions of experts and NGOs. So it is kind of bottom-up approach with attempts to influence the development of the local program for reconstruction. They also try to work with the independent media and try to involve citizens horizontally, but again, it is a lack of political agents behind that, and a very limited set of donors who could be reached by these, I would say, horizontal coalitions. And going closer to my, let's say, conclusions, I would like to say that after the interviews and desk research and kind of analysis of the media publication and discussions in social networks and special groups in Facebook and Telegram, I would like to say that from the governmental or from the helicopter view, there is no single pattern, even today, or the comprehensive plan from the government how to rebuild Ukraine. Actually, the Ukraine Facility Plan adopted last year could be the framework, and I think it should be the framework because it's not only about the reconstruction, it's also about the reforms priorities. So these processes should go hand by hand. From the regional and local communities view, there are too much overlapping but not necessarily matching each other documents that they are demanded to develop, but not necessarily they will be also linked to the funds or projects that will be implemented by the government donors. And actually, communities are obliged to, and regions obliged to involve citizens in discussions and creation of the programs, but they do it in a very selective and different way. And the efficiency of the instruments of the citizens' inclusion depends on communication from the local authorities. So we mentioned Henry Hale here before, and I also believe that these local political regimes are also influential factor of how people involved in discussing the reconstruction. But actually, when it is the goodwill or the other way around, the political weakness of the local actors, NGOs and civil society and professional groups, they get a unique chance to be heard and to be more proactive than in cases when there are a lot of pre-established, let's say, political parties and the local political regime is pretty consolidated. And the main surprise in my research was that Actually, the allocations of funds and public trust, in particular mayor, do not depend on the quality of these city programs which were developed, or they do not depend on the inclusivity of the process, how openly they were and transparently they were developed, and allocations of funds also do not actually depend on the kind of real priorities or real needs of these communities. I will stop here probably, and we'll ask our organizers to send everybody who interested a very last part of my presentation with the statistics. But now I would like to thank you for your attention, and hope you will have some questions to probably show you the numbers and figures about why it's so. Thank you so much.